Chairperson, distinguished guests, my fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I consider it as a great privilege to present to you all this research paper, A Better Approach to Animal Welfare Law, a critical analysis of the law on prevention of cruelty to animals in Sri Lanka, at the 11th International Research Conference of KDU. As Mahatma Gandhi once said, the greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated. I hold that the more helpless a creature, the more entitled it is to the protection by man from the cruelty of humankind. A special status ought to be awarded for the rights pertaining to the welfare of animals, especially recognizing their inherent right to be safeguarded against cruel and inhumane treatment. Thus, this research is based on the cruelty prevalent in Sri Lanka, specifically addressing the victimization of elephants and stray dogs due to cruel and inhumane treatment. The issue is of two folds. Firstly, the domesticated elephants are subjected to cruelty and inhumane treatment as a result of these acts, and in using them to provide elephant rides, they undergo a horrific training process known as the crush, where it involves physical restraints, severe pain, and withholding of food and water. According to the competent authorities, a crude metal frame weighing 50 kilograms is fitted onto an elephant for which their dorsum is not anatomically designed for, thus damaging their dorsum and pelvic region. In extreme situations in controlling these captive elephants, apart from traditional restraining methods, they are also hit in the head, where cases have reported that those caused eye injuries. Due to these acts, they undergo immense cruel and inhumane treatment since they are kept chained and restrained by the humans. Secondly, the extermination of stray dogs within the premises of University of Jayawardenepura Moratuwa, which grasped the attention of many animal activists and the public. Stray dogs have undergone unnecessary suffering and superfluous injury due to overdose of sedatives that were given to chase them away from the premises, since they were known to cause maimings within the premises. Hence, the objective of this research was to identify if the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Ordinance number 13 of 1907 is adequate in addressing the two folds of the major issue related to animal cruelty that took place in the recent past and is still taking place in Sri Lanka. And also this ordinance is of 1907, which was after that it was amended in 1955. However, it is an archaic piece of legislation and is also the principal legislation that exists to provide for law against cruelty to animals in Sri Lanka. Resorting to a qualitative methodology and the black letter approach, a descriptive evaluation of the existing authoritative legal resources was carried out in this research. Out of these existing law on the protection of animal rights in Sri Lanka, the research focused on provisions in the Rabies Ordinance, Registration of Dogs Ordinance, and the Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance, as well as the Prevention of Cruelty to Animal Ordinance, which is the main legislation that I'll be discussing during this presentation due to time limitations. Applicability of the important provisions of this ordinance to the issue was evaluated, analyzed in detail under this research paper. Some key provisions are as follows. The preamble to this ordinance states that it is an ordinance to make better provisions for prevention of cruelty to animals. And under Section 2, the offense of cruelty emphasizes causing unnecessary pain or suffering to any animal by any act or omission, ill-treating, abusing, and cruel beating as constituent elements of the offense. And the definition of an animal under this ordinance only states an animal to mean any domestic or captured animal and includes any bird, fish, or reptile in captivity. Also, the penalties for committing offences under this ordinance are fines of 100 or 200 rupees and imprisonments for a maximum term of 3 months. and also this ordinance states that the offences under this ordinance are cognizable offences, therefore depicting the severity of these offences. Accordingly, it was evident that the PCAO is the key legislation that exists to provide for the prevention of cruelty to animals. However, in critically analyzing its applicability to the issue, violation of the existing law was evident, and also the following deficiencies were found within the ordinance. First, the narrow definition of the animal. It does not include all animals into its meaning, and the outdated and lenient penalties, since it is an archaic piece of statute. And the third, non-recognition of the concept of duty of care that is owed by a person in charge of an animal. And the fourth, absence of an establishment of a monitoring body, a statutory body that shall monitor issues pertaining to animal cruelty issues as well as animal welfare issues. It also clearly lacks provisions to address issues relating to animals in pet shops, animal experimenting, animal performance, live transport of animals, and use of elephants for rides and processions. This research recommends to incorporate into Sri Lankan law pertaining to animal welfare similar legal principles enacted by countries like India, Singapore, and Malaysia, who are known to have fine animal welfare legislation. The definition of an animal under the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act of India in 1960, which was amended in 2016 as well, it states that an animal means any living creature other than a human being. And the penalties under the new law on animal welfare in Singapore imposes 2 to 3 jail terms, and Animals and Birds Amendment Act of Singapore provides for the practice of positive duty of care. Under the fundamental duties of the Indian Constitution, under Article 51, capital AG, stipulates that it's a fundamental duty of every citizen of India to have compassion for all living creatures, thus giving recognition to consider compassion for all living creatures as well as animals. And Malaysian law since 2013 provides for a new licensing system for animal-related businesses and new responsibilities for pet owners and license holders. And also this research recommends to resort to the no-kill policy and CNVR, catch, neuter, vaccinate, and release, as recommended by the World Health Organization and the World Organization for Animal Health, which Sri Lanka is obliged to follow, being a member of both organizations, as well as to establish authorities or government-funded organizations in order to improve living conditions of community dogs through veterinary and feeding centers and fenced zones. A notable initiative however, has taken place in the last few years, 10 years, that is the drafting of the Animal Welfare Bill by the Law Commission of Sri Lanka, which was furthered by the animal activists in Sri Lanka. It was approved by the Cabinet in 2016, although it is yet to be enacted as law in Sri Lanka. Novel provisions are introduced by this Act to improve the existing animal welfare law in Sri Lanka. Therefore, the bill has been able to overcome the existing deficiencies under the ordinance. For example, Section 80 expands the definition of an animal to include any living creature other than a human being. Section 3 expressly recognizes the concept of duty of care that is ought to be owed by the animal owners. Any living creature other than a human, and also it comprehensively defines the different offences and prohibited conducts that are punishable under the bill. Furthermore, the perpetrators can be convicted under the jurisdiction of the magistrate court, and also be made liable for more stringent penalties. Section 5 establishes the National Animal Welfare Authority, which is a statutory monitoring body which is vested with powers to take care of issues relating to animal cruelty in Sri Lanka. In conclusion, it is identified that the current law dates back to 1907 and lacks in deterrent effect, which prevents the protection of animals against cruelty. It is time we change these laws and make sure that the long overdue Animal Welfare Bill is passed for efficient action against cruelty to animals. Hence, enact law to effectively address the issue of victimization of elephants and stray dogs due to cruel and inhumane treatment. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, let me reiterate that it is the high time to enact the long overdue Animal Welfare Bill in order to overcome the deficiencies under the current ordinance and ensure effective laws on cruelty to animals in Sri Lanka. Thank you for your kind attention. Have a great day.